Hey everyone, it's Houston, back again. And today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of tobaccos. Now, whenever I first got started in this hobby, learning about the different types of tobaccos was one of my favorite things to do. I'd spend a lot of time on the internet just browsing through, trying to learn what I could about different blends and the tobaccos that made up the blends. But I just want to, talk briefly about each one of the, more common ones that we see. And, just kind of give you a brief rundown on it. Like I said, mine's just going to be a quick description. So I would encourage you to, look these up for yourself. There's a lot of history behind each blend, or each different type of tobacco, how it, came to be what it is today, and I don't know, I just find it, really fascinating. So I'd, definitely encourage you to go read up on it. It's pretty neat stuff. But before we do that, if you caught my earlier video, I'm still working on the same thing. Got my 7 310 KS. It's the Roma rustication, and in it I got the Warhorse bar, and of course drink pairing is my coffee there. So I hope y'all don't mind. I actually got my little notepad with me today to kind of keep me on track, keep me from wandering off subject too much. Get this adjusted here. I need to get me a little stand for this thing. I set it on the table and it likes to kind of just take off on me. But anyway, let's get into the video, shall we? One more drink of coffee before we get rolling here. Alright. Now, we'll start with burley there. Now, burley, it's a air-cured type tobacco. I think it was originally from around Ohio, but it's grown just about everywhere around the world now. I want to say like 70% of it's actually grown in the state of Kentucky. 20% is grown in Tennessee. And the rest is, divided up some of the other states along the eastern seaboard there. Like I said, it's also grown all around the world. That's just, the United States production. But it's a real light tobacco. Like I said, it's air cured. It's real low in sugar, but it's real high in nicotine. It usually forms the base of a lot of different tobacco blends. And it has a real subtle flavor to it. Now, of course, the next one would be Virginias. And, of course, those are my favorites. So, but anyway, Virginias, well, like the name suggests, were originally grown around Virginia and on the east there. But today, I mean, they're grown all over the world. Africa, the Middle East, Asia. I'm pretty sure, they're also grown in Europe. But aside from the United States, I think most of it comes from Africa. I want to say the Virginia and the Brown Bogey Twist actually comes from Africa. It's some pretty tasty stuff. But what gives Virginia its characteristics is it's really high in sugar and kind of moderate to low in nicotine. It all just depends on how it's cured. And there are all different types of ways to, cure Virginia. A lot of it's flue cured, heat cured, smoke cured. I mean, there's just all different ways they can do it. But the most common you usually see is the flue cured. But since it's so high in sugar, that's why Virginias usually have a tendency to burn hot, or hotter than, most other tobaccos. It's because of the sugar in it causes it to heat up and burn a lot hotter. And that's why you kind of got to have a slow rhythm, or else you're just going to be sucking hot air and burning your tongue and, causing damage to your pipe probably from the heat. Now, I have seen estate pipes that have heat cracks inside the bowl after you ream them from people smoking their pipes too hot. But that higher sugar content, also means more flavor, and it can range from anything from grass to hay to fruit. I mean, Virginia's got a wide range. And I think that's what I like about Virginia the best, is how fun it is to just kind of, sit and try and pick out all the different flavors from all the different blends. And next I want to cover Orientals, or Turkish. I think it's more commonly, known as Turkish. And it's more of what they call a spiced tobacco, or a condiment tobacco. And it's usually, found over around the Mediterranean. I can't really remember right off the top of my head exactly how it's cured. But there's all different types of varieties of Turkish, each one of them, their own unique characteristics and flavor. And that'd be a whole nother video, in and of itself. So we'll just leave it there as far as the Orientals and Turkish goes. Next would be a lot of folks' favorite, Latakia. Now, Latakia is a Middle Eastern tobacco, or styled tobacco. It was real big, they made a lot of it in Syria. And Cyprus is also another big producer of the Latakia. And I'm not sure exactly what type of tobacco they use for it, but how it's cured is they actually cure it over an open fire. And then they add different spices and things to the fire, to change the profile of the smoke, which in turn changes the flavor and the profiles of the tobacco. Now, there was this thing going around years ago that folks were saying that they use smoked camel dung to flavor the tobacco. Well, that's absolutely not true at all. In fact, that sounds like something my mother would have came up with whenever I was a kid to try and deter me from smoking a pipe. So, and I imagine that's where, it kind of had its origin. Probably anti-smokers trying to deter people, away from it. Or if it wasn't the anti-smokers, maybe it was, one business, criticizing another business's product, or I don't know how that got started, but it did, and it's just not true. So, but how Latakia is cured is over an open fire, it's smoked, and then they add different spices and stuff to the fire to change the flavor of the tobacco. Now, next would be Perique, and I do love me some Perique. And its history is fairly interesting. And I ain't gonna get into that too much here, but it was a Frenchman that started doing it like that, uh, doing the process that makes Perique, and he actually learned it from a group of local Indians, and I can't remember the tribe right off the top of my head that he learned it from, but how they used to do it is they would put it, the tobacco, which is usually a type of burley, in the hollowed out logs and get it, moist, and then build a fire under the log. And what it would do is it would steam and pretty much pressure cook that tobacco inside that log. Then whenever it was done, they would take it out. While it's in there steaming and under that pressure, it also starts to ferment. And that's what gives Perique its unique flavor. Of course, it ain't done like that anymore now. I think it's done in wooden barrels where it's put under pressure and steamed. But there's a lot of different Periques out there, and I know they all say Perique. But the original would be the St. James Parish Perique. Excuse me. And it's fairly rare to find that in a tobacco nowadays. I've had a few blends that had it, and you can definitely tell the difference between it and then, most of the Perique that you find in other blends. I just like to call that other stuff imitation Perique, and it's good. I still enjoy it a lot, but it's not actual true St. James Perique. But you will find the true stuff in, a few select blends, Esoterica. But I'm not sure exactly how they do that. I do know that Perique, or the original stuff, is actually endangered of disappearing. And last I checked, it was only grown on one 10-acre farm in the St. James Parish around New Orleans. But I would encourage you to, kind of look up, some of the dangers that Perique faces, and how it went from, being a huge part, of the pipe tobacco world to, shrinking down to just that one 10-acre farm. And like I said, it's been a little while since I've looked all this up. I mean, it could have turned around by now, and it might be on the rise again, but, most of the stuff we smoke is the imitation Perique. But definitely one of my favorites still. My notebook lying around here. Let's see, Cavendish. Well, Cavendish isn't exactly a specific type of tobacco. It's a process that they do on the tobacco, and they can use Burleys, Virginias, dark fired. It's usually found in pipe tobacco and cigars. But it's a pretty neat process. What they usually do is they just stack the tobacco's leaves into bales and allow it to ferment on its own under its own weight and pressure. And it pretty much, brings the sugars out, changes the flavor, the profile, ferments it, and that's how you get that. And I honestly think that might be why on straight black Cavendish tobaccos I usually get that berry taste. I'm getting, that fermented flavor. But if you haven't seen how they do that, there's a few videos on YouTube here that shows how they do Cavendish tobaccos. You can read up on it. It's pretty neat how they do it. Who would have thought? I imagine that's one of those things they found out by accident just by storing the tobacco long term. And finally, we have another one of my favorites. Dark Fired Kentucky. Now this is an interesting tobacco. It's some people say it's its own, special type of tobacco. Oh, got a message. Some folks say it's its own special type of tobacco. And I've also heard that they use Burleys and Virginias to do dark fired, but the dark firing is a process. It's pretty neat. Actually, I think it's Old Berg right now has a series going on how they do the dark fired, And you can also find other videos out there on YouTube, but, you know, go check out Old Bergs. He's doing a series on it right now. But in a nutshell, how they do it is they pretty much, you know, grab up the tobacco, take it to a barn, hang it up, you know, get some hardwoods, you know, like oak, hickory, walnut, stuff you usually find out in the woods around here. You know, put it out on the floor of the barn where the tobacco's hanging. You know, get some sawdust, and they start a fire. Well, it's not a huge fire. It's more like a slow, smoldering type fire. And they leave it in that barn all shut up and let it smolder, or anywhere between 3 to 10 days. And then they usually do that, you know, 3 times or more. And the result is dark fire Kentucky. So I would definitely encourage you to, you know, go check that process out. It's pretty neat. But yeah, definitely, you know, one of my all-time favorites. In fact, this Warhorse Bar has a little bit of dark fired in it, and it is quite tasty. But anyway, y'all, that's just a few different types of tobaccos, you know, in a nutshell there. I don't want to get too detailed, or else we'd be sitting here for an hour or so or more. But yeah, I would definitely encourage you to, you know, go check out, you know, the different processes and all the different types of tobaccos if you haven't already. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there, and a lot of historical information as well. And once you move on from the different types of tobaccos, you can go on to individual blend houses. You know, there's a lot of, especially over in England and Europe, that have been around for hundreds of years. You know, blending these tobaccos, and there's a lot of history there. And it's all a real fascinating read. But anyway, y'all, that was my different types of tobaccos. Just the quick version. But I guess I'm going to go ahead and get off here, enjoy this, finish up my coffee, and get my day started. So, y'all take it easy, and we will talk to y'all later.